Awesome, guys. So welcome to today's presentation. Yeah, so I thought I'd be a bit political and a bit fun and games, but with a very serious undercurrent here, because I think one of the challenges that I'm seeing, is just how far out the US is from every other country. I mean, the interesting thing with this whole coronavirus has been that a lot of different countries started out in different places, but they've sort of converged to what is working. But then the US is totally the opposite. And it's quite disgusting, actually, to the point where you just sit there and think, how many people are going to have to die before they realise what's going on? I mean, it just is incredible, the incompetence and as I put, the arrogance of Trump, And I think more than that, it's the failure of US democracy. I mean, democracy is all about, representing the people, coordinating and representing the people. But what you realise is they're not representing the people. They're representing, the lobbyists and the corporate interests and just some of the things that come out, means testing the poorest, but then giving unfettered 500 billion to anyone that they decide and not having any accountability for it. It's appalling what they're doing there. But anyway, look, guys, we'll get started today. It is an interesting time for everyone, I think. And let's start the presentation. So, here we go. So look, the arrogance of Trump and the failure of US democracy. It's a big call to say, but I actually truly believe that. I think there's so much that really just should not be like this. But yeah, look, as per my counter, we're 20 days left before we start to relax some of those, the lockdown potentially, or according to Boris, it's 17 days. But I still think there'll be 80 days left where, we'll still be releasing. When I say release, it's not going to be a total, right, we're going to relax everything. That's not going to happen, and that's what the 80 days is, where basically life gets back to normal in sort of 80 days' time. But realistically, economically, 2020 is cancelled, So that's why I'm saying pivot, reassess your relationship, all that sort of stuff, okay? Now, just looking at the figures today, so we're up to 532,000, 50,000, the largest daily increase since it started, we're really starting to see that curve now kicking in. Wow, so the interesting thing with this, I'm going to look at this a bit more detail with reference to US and just what it is when you don't do things right, what it is when you leave things, what it is when you deny things, when you don't test, all this sort of stuff. It's appalling. The interesting thing is, if you look at the numbers there, and you may not be able to see them close up, but bottom line is US has overtaken China in terms of number of cases, not number of deaths yet. And what that says is basically that they're behind the curve. So what happens is the cases increase and then the deaths follow. But right now, because if you think they're not testing enough people, so if they're not testing cases, then they're not going to know they've got cases. So the case reference is going to be lower, and then what's going to happen is those deaths are going to start pouring in and they're going to be overwhelmed. The medical is going to be overwhelmed. It's an appalling abuse. From the UK perspective, 2,000 new cases. They're now really ramping up testing, which is great because you want two things. You want the top-down approach, which is clamp everything down, lock it down, yeah? And then you want the bottom-up approach, which is test lots, and then once you get those tests, trace all the people that have been in contact with those person. And that way, if you attack it from both those ends, that is the successful model. That is what's working in Singapore. That's worked in South Korea. That's worked in Taiwan. A lot of these places that had SARS, they have successful models. It's also, to a degree, we're not sure about the contact tracing and testing in China because I know they've run out of tests. But the reality was they were very, the top down was there, the bottom up. We just don't know exactly, but they certainly ramped up the testing massively, and they have now done, and they're actually sending a lot of test kits and things out to other countries and that sort of stuff. So that's quite interesting. But look, let's have a look here. So this is this is Italy, this is the UK, and this is the US on the left in the red. Now, the interesting thing is, if you look at Italy, 5,200 deaths. This is just deaths, because deaths should be an accurate measure. Cases aren't necessarily an accurate measure because, as we know, 80% of people don't really have too many symptoms and potentially don't need hospitalization. So, Italy has 8,200 deaths. The issue with Italy is they had a lot of Chinese workers in there because obviously a lot of their trades, clothing and that, they basically want to put made in Italy. Yeah, so there's a lot of Chinese returned and potentially took the virus with them, and that's why. And so there's community spread and all that. So that's why their numbers are so bad. Some people were saying that they've got the oldest population and all that. That doesn't really hold true because 23% is over 65, but 21% is in Germany, and yet Germany's rate is so much lower. So there's a number of things that don't match up there. But UK 578, we're a lot lower. As of the 21st of March, we're on the same par in terms of days since the first death. Now, the interesting thing is our curve isn't going up as fast. That's good news for the UK. If we can keep that trend happening, then maybe we have clamped down quick enough and got things under control. Okay, I've done a previous video comparing UK and Italy and why I think that is the case and will be the case. But that doesn't mean we're still not going to see the curve going up for quite some time. But the US, I don't think you can trust their figures at all one little bit. Whether that be the cases or the deaths, I think things are a lot higher. Hearing videos of people being sent home, going there and saying, I know you're not over 65, it's probably not a worry, just go home and don't worry about it. I mean, they're not even getting down as a case. If they were then to pass away, doctors are saying it's probably just a cold. Well, if they die, they're not going to get recorded as a death. And that's what I think is happening. And I also think that the cases are ramping up and now the deaths are going to start ramping up. And that's when Trump will be shown for the, bloody idiot he is. Now, if we look at the US, what I did is I took all the world numbers and I took all the US numbers and I put them all together. And the interesting thing, the US numbers by state, okay? So all those yellow lines there are the states, yeah? So actually, of the top 48 countries, or there's 48 countries with more than 1,000 cases, more than 1,000 cases. Of those, 15 out of the 48, or a third basically, are from the US. So if you don't think that the US numbers are going to go through the roof, it's just impossible. They're not even acting upon it yet. They're not taking it seriously yet. They're not putting the money, they're not taking it seriously. I mean, it's just amazing the total incompetence of these idiots. And, I can't stress enough this whole thing because for me, these numbers, look, you can look at the numbers and all that sort of stuff. And actually, one other thing, I'll put that back up too. On the left-hand side there's the dates where they've put lockdown. So basically 2/3 of America are on lockdown, but a lot of lockdowns are only in certain cities and only in certain places. And so it's one of these things where it's kind of like, some people aren't really taking it serious still. They're waiting until the thing really hits them. And by that time, it's too late. This is not best practice. Nobody, is saying they should do that. But they still haven't locked down in a lot of cases. And I think, the amazing thing is just the sheer incompetence that starts from the top. But it's not only Trump. Make no mistake, we can level a lot of Trump, and he is an arrogant prick, and he shouldn't be in that position whatsoever, and a lot of people are going to die because of it. But actually, it's the whole establishment. Yeah, there's it's the lobbyists, the corporations, it's the whole thing is just corrupt, and unfortunately, that's how it is. Look, talking about Trump and the leadership, lacking leadership. They won't listen to professionals. If the doctors were running this as a medical, tragedy, then things would have been a lot different, I think. And we would have been able to flatten that curve in the US, all right? There's plenty of other models now proving this is how you deal with it. They're not following it. Testing between 5 and 313 tests per million, so 5 is one of the lowest rates, and it's terrible, to think, and that's what's happening now. They seem to be ramping it up, but are they really? Because, for instance, the equipment, Defence Production Act, there's no instructions to anyone to build that. Interestingly, in the UK, Dyson are building ventilators. You've got Under Armour building, masks and personal protective equipment and that sort of things. So people are jumping in the UK and they're getting involved. 560,000 people sign up as volunteers. 4,500 doctors and nurses coming back to the thing. It's not really happening. I mean, they've got hospital ships. Trump gets up there and says, "Yeah, we've got 2 hospital ships that are going to, east and west coast, but one of them's in maintenance and it'll be weeks away." Well, in weeks away, we'll probably be too late for it to really be effective. Vaccines aren't ready, and him saying they are is just appalling. You've got people who are, it just shows you the level of thinking, but They listen to Trump speak. He says the name of the chemical. They go to their fish tank and find it in their fish tank and take this stuff as a precautionary measure. And end up one of them, the husband dies, and it's like, my goodness. But and then he makes statements like, "I don't take responsibility," not at all. That is not leadership. If you want to know how to be a leader, look at Trump, do the opposite, and I tell you, you're looking pretty good, I reckon. Look, he spreads disinformation. So the problem is, if you look at all the good models, the proper models like Singapore and Korea, what they've been doing is spreading information, and even the good and the bad, they've been giving it out there so people can make a fully informed decision. Trump has been saying all sorts of crap, and then had the media that supports him backing a lot of that crap up. And it just creates, uncertainty and indecision. And you can't do that. I mean, Trump treats everything like a marketing PR exercise. That's his whole frame of reference. How will it appear, on Fox News? And that is pretty much his filter. Yeah. That is not somebody you should have running a country, and not somebody you should have on a nuclear code. I mean, it's appalling. He doesn't understand the medical. He doesn't understand the scientific. He doesn't understand the human tragedy side. He's purely economics focused. And unfortunately, that's not the guy you want leading this sort of thing. It'll be interesting to see if they get rid of him. I don't think they will. I think he will do. He's got rid of impeachment. They will back him because they want to stay in power, and he'll blame it on. I mean, right now he's blaming it on the Canadians because he's putting 1,000 troops on the Canadian border because, of course, Canada with free healthcare for all wants to go to America with ridiculously expensive, overpriced, and poor healthcare. I mean, why would they want to? It's a media stunt. It's a PR stunt. The interesting thing is, the US is a failed system. I'm sorry, but, as much as I love the concept behind capitalism and democracy, and all that, that is not happening. That is not what's happening. I mean, if anything, they're more akin to communism now in the US, where basically a few at the very top say that they're looking after everyone else, but that's just not the reality. There it's the dystopian 1984, Hunger Games in real life, and becoming more so. And I think really politicians are so focused on bailing out, corporates and lobbyists that they forget about the people. That's just what's happening. The system's so corrupt that actually, if you're in another country, the stuff that they can do legally, you'd be put in prison for. And most of the rest of the free world, because let's face it, America's not a free country anymore. I don't care what anyone says. That has not happened. That's been gone a long time ago. That was 9/11, The reality is that doesn't exist anymore. If you did what you do in America, what these politicians do anywhere else in the world, you'd be in prison, Look, it's a warning to the rest of us. And I think the real thing is unfettered greed. This is where it ends up. And look to the US and be very afraid if your country is heading down that way, because actually that is not what you want. Look, when your political leaders can't, protect you, you've got to replace them. When your political system can't protect you, you've got to change it. You've got to replace it. And look, the reality is the US right now has an abusive relationship. And unfortunately, the rich are abusing the poor. And a lot of people won't like that. And already I've had a few conversations, from when I presented this morning to my team and that, and a few other guys that I sort of ran this by. But, at the end of the day, this is the truth that I'm seeing, and I'm watching a lot of stuff. And I just am appalled by Trump and the whole establishment, the whole establishment. This is Biden, it's, the whole lot of them. It's appalling. And I hope that we never get to that, in Australia or in Singapore or in the UK, where I spend most of my time. It certainly doesn't look like that. And certainly, UK was heading down that track, but I think we've done a bit of a pivot now. And I think Boris, and I got to give credit to the Boris and Richie show, because actually it feels like we've turned a corner. That may not be the case. This may just be wartime showmanship. But, even before this, the budget was a big turn in the right direction. So, hopefully things are looking pretty good. And I'm mildly optimistic because the UK has come from such a low base. And then, through Brexit, those 3 years of Brexit. And then because we hadn't ramped up yet, now with coronavirus, the likelihood is, and with the stimulus package, that we can actually come back really, really strong. Certainly stronger than the EU is looking, or the US is looking. And I think the UK is looking pretty damn good right now for when it comes back. We'll get rid of the virus, and then there's the question of the economics, but it's amazing times right now, Anyway, guys, that's my rant for today. We'll see you again tomorrow, same time. We'll see you on Monday, same time. It's Friday today. Week's going like this at the moment. But look, any questions you've got, you can pump them into YouTube. You can send them through to me. Send them webinars at gladfish.com, and I'll get them answered on video. I'm doing heaps of videos right now, as you will see from my channel, and also on the website is gladfish.com/COVID19. And that's a list of all the videos on various aspects for property investors. Questions people are asking and things like that. I'm getting lots of questions from investors, lots of questions from tenants and landlords about how to deal with things, what's happening and all that sort of stuff, because there's a lot of information that isn't coming out. But look, guys, thank you very much for watching, and stay safe, stay healthy, and as always, stay at home right now. And we'll see you on the other side, but I'm here, if you've got any questions. All right, guys, have a great day. See you later. Bye.